name's Steve Picard. I'm with Siemens, and I have Rick Kluth, my counter presenter here. We're going to go over Siemens' answer to secure remote connectivity. So we're not going to cover all the products, but we're going to cover some of the high level products and some of the solutions. Myself, I've been with Siemens 20 years and worked in a bunch of different functions. I worked in the automation group and worked with the safety PLC team for quite a few years, and been in the network team in my last couple of years with Siemens. I'm a Siemens certified network professional, and Rick's got a lot more levels of certification than I do. He's one of our national support people that support pre-sales for networking and cybersecurity and all kinds of other aspects of our job. I don't know, Rick, if you want to just give a little introduction of who you are, that would be great.
Just overall network infrastructure support, so pre-sales, post-sales, so that's switching, routing, modems, cybersecurity, lots of wireless applications. Background is in automation, and like I said, been with Siemens for 25 years.
And looks really good. So if you can get him on a project, you're lucky to have him. He's really good at wireless. I know that because we use him a lot for that, but he can do all the other stuff as well. So, but anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the technologies, the hardware and the software around providing secure remote connectivity. I'm going to kick it off with a couple slides on just some of the products and solutions. And then Rick's actually going to do a live demo on actually setting up our SINEMA RC server connection and set up one of the device, our remote connectivity modems or security appliances, and then actually connect through the internet to a PLC I guess he has in his office. So hopefully, and then at the end, I'll wrap it up with a couple of slides. We'll have hopefully time for some questions. And if we don't, and if you have any interest and you want to just talk on the side, you can give me an email or a call, or talk to one of your applied sales team, and we'll they'll get us plugged in. So again, thank you very much, Applied, for hosting this webinar today, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. So let's kick it off the right way. So why are people looking at remote connectivity? You know, it's one of the trends is this Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, that's kind of driving a lot of customers start thinking about connecting their factory or their machine, via some type of web-based connectivity. We're seeing growth rates of 18% annually through 2024, as far as people actually connecting devices to the internet, so the machines to the internet. So some of the drivers we believe on the machine builder side, and I'm seeing this today, is they're trying to minimize, failures, having to support these machines. Some of my customers actually have, just in the U.S., 50,000, machines that they support, and they have one customer has 5 field engineers to go out and support these machines. So for them to effectively support their customers and do better planning of those resources, having the remote connection, whether it be all the time or when they need to the machines, has become really important to them. And then we even have customers that are taking advantage of this, because this is a revenue stream where they're actually creating, analytics on their machine and providing dashboards to their customers. So they're actually looking at this as a way to produce revenue. So that's some of the trends we're seeing on the machine builder side. I'm sure I'm missing some things. On the plant side or the end user side, it's very important, first of all, to have safe connections to their plant or their factories. So providing security is number one first, and then the other things we're seeing in trends is that customers are seeing benefits of segmenting those areas. So their remote connectivity is segmented to a specific area of the factory. We'll talk about that. And then, the benefit to them too is to be able to tie into their user base authentication system, whether it be Active Directory or Radius Server, and also providing that encryption and that protection that they need, that they can manage. So, and again, lastly, an important thing is for the, the factory to have that transparency and production data remotely, or machine monitoring if the plant engineer is not on site and he needs to fix a machine. But ultimately, they want to make sure that their critical applications continue to run. So that's kind of the trends we're seeing in the market for remote connectivity. So if we look at it, just a sample of a generic factory here, you have some raw material, you have different production areas. If you look on the right, you'll see a network topology. This may be a common one that we see out there, where you have your field devices and a couple different layers before you get to the IT layer. And then each of these areas could be segmented. And what we're seeing is, providing some type of segmentation for the data that's going in and out of those areas. So that protects those areas from, for instance, somebody that's man in the middle, that's in the factory, you don't want them to access a mission critical part of the plant. Or if you have IT that shouldn't be, flooding the network with different things that could cause the machine to be disrupted. So we're really talking about communication internally right now in the plant, and then we're going to talk a little more about external communication. So one of the things that we use, that we support and sell, is our security appliances. And these devices provide a lot of different tools. You can do segmentation through VLANs. It has a stateful firewall. It also has the ability to provide VPN tunneling, different types of VPN tunneling we support, IPsec, OpenVPNs, one of the common ones we use, one of the newer ones. Also, these devices can tie topologies together through ring redundancy, which is important if you're trying to maintain operations. And then lastly, the other thing we see a lot is customers using these devices for NATing. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, but the network translation, address translation is key to security as well. I mean, it's just another layer. And some customers just use these devices for specific, it could just be for NATing, it could be for firewall, it could be for VPN. So the nice thing about these devices is they can be used for multiple different applications. So if you looked at some of the different specific areas that you might use a security appliance, it could be for setting up a demilitarized zone where you're controlling the data going in and out of that area. It could be from IT going through this demilitarized zone to your plant floor, or it could be tying external to the plant, through a VPN tunnel. So that's an area we see commonly used. Again, redundancy we talked about, be able to maintain the high availability, but also provide that security to those segmented areas of your plant. And then remote connectivity is kind of the main part of our presentation today, to be able to provide secure access to your plant. Specifically, maybe the OEM only has access to a machine or part of a machine, part of a line. And then, of course, not allowing certain people or any, into the plant. So providing that secure connectivity to only people that need it. And then cell protection, we talked a little bit about this. Again, the cell protection could be through, through a firewall, through a NATing, through routing. These are also routers, these security appliances. So there's a lot of different ways of doing this. So that's why we have people like Rick around that can help a customer navigate through what they're trying to accomplish and what makes sense, some people start with using maybe one feature like a firewall or NATing, and then they say later on, hey, I need to connect this remotely. So they might use that VPN capability within the security appliance. So it's kind of just a little quick details. This is our gigabit 646 security appliance. It's high speed and handles fiber. So if you're tying this to a fiber backbone, it's also a fully managed switch. And it's got, of course, the NATing we talked about. It also can be tied into our Siemens sells a network management software called NMS. We also have SINEMA server, which is our older software, but still being used. And these devices are critical to applying, security policies throughout the plant and navigating, through your network. So these are integral to that type of topology. And then lastly, mostly what we're going to talk about today is the SINEMA RC, which is our VPN's server software, which allows you that remote secure connectivity to your plant or to your machine. We also have a baby brother to that, 646, and there's also a 636. This has is a fast Ethernet device, so it's not the gigabit, but in a lot of cases this is, and I see this being used quite often, probably more often than the gigabit unit. It handles the VLANs, it has the stateful firewall, it has a VPN, it has a netting technology. So it's a pretty commonly used device if you're trying to connect outside the plant. The top port is your WAN connection, your northbound connection outside the outside your plant through some internet provider. Now let's drill down to, now we talked about the appliances in the plant, you know, connecting machine to machine or automation cell to automation cell. Let's talk a little bit more about connecting outside the plant. So if you had a demilitarized zone set up in a plant, this might be where you put your VPN connection. Now this is a cellular modem. We sell a bunch of different cellular modem as well. This is actually looks just like our baby brother the 615 security appliance. It's actually the same device, except rather than having a WAN connection, a hardwired connection, it's got a radio modem in it. And this can be supported with almost any of the carriers that you can, with a SIM card that you can apply. We sell data plans through applied for Verizon and AT&T in the US, but of course you could use your own SIM plan. Also, if you're connecting and then outside the plant, you could use somebody else's VPN server, but if you use ours, we would provide a SINEMA RC, and we'll talk a little more about that in a second. We also have these security appliances we just mentioned. They could also be your remote connectivity outside the plant using the security appliances. We also have some sidecar communication processors that will connect into your 1500 PLC if you're using Siemens, that have similar functionality. It has the natting, it has the firewall, it has the VPN tunneling. So this might save you, you know, some room in your cabinet, or just tie it into your portal a little easier. So just looking detail into one of our radio modems. This is an M876-4. It has a couple slots in the back. One is for a memory card or memory plug. We call it a key plug or a C plug. The key plug actually has the license for your SINEMA RC. So if you're going to use our VPN server, you would buy with a key plug. But also it saves the configuration. So if you configure this with a lot of different natting tools, and you set up firewalls and user-based firewalls, you want to store those configurations on the device if it fails. Probably will never fail though. And then SINEMA RC connection would be with the key plug. And then the SIM cards, you can put them in the back, and you know, again, we sell those. Has a bunch of different mounting features. The LEDs will give you not only if you have a VPN connection indication, also tell you the strength of your radio connection based on the color and the flashing. So you can do a lot of visual on the fly diagnostics just by looking at the unit. In a full managed 4-port managed switch, it also has digital inputs and outputs. So if you wanted to say lock out, you only wanted to turn on your VPN tunnel when you needed it. If you had a plant, and you could actually put a key switch on the inputs or a PLC output, you can use the outputs on this unit to maybe light up a light stack to show people that there's somebody actually working on the machine remotely. And then you can also use, with our cell modems, you can use text messaging, an SMS, or an email to turn on that connection. So if you're remote to the plant and you want to turn on a connection, say if you're over in Europe and you didn't want to use up your data, you could turn on the connection with a text message or an email. So different things you could do with it. Again, we have all the different products to support our wireless and our wired solutions. We have a lot of different antennas, depending on if you're mounting it on a vehicle or if you're looking for an outdoor antenna. So, and we can obviously sell you the IPCs too to drive our SINEMA RC server. And again, I'm not going to go through all these. These are just the little benefits that I kind of mentioned as I covered it. So let's talk specifically about our SINEMA RC server. So one of the benefits for a software is you can set the server up anywhere. It doesn't take a lot of horsepower as far as a CPU. It's like a dual core. We have the specs on that, but it doesn't require a huge server. It can run on a virtual machine or a dedicated PC. It basically takes over that, so it has its own operating system. It runs on Linux. and it's a secure-based appliance. So it's basically when you buy our SINEMA RC, it comes with 4 clients to connect 4 different devices, and you can add clients as you need them. So one of the benefits of our SINEMA RC is it's a single tenant server solution, meaning that you own the data. A lot of the competitors that we deal with out there have multi-tenant servers, which is deemed not a very safe cybersecurity way of going, because you're basically on the same database with a lot of other clients. So owning your own server is really a benefit to owning where your data and making sure that it's secure and not open up to cyber threats. Just kind of details about our SINEMA RC. Again, I told you it runs on its own PC or virtual machine. You get the 4 clients when you install it, and you can increase those clients up to 1,024, and basically only buy them once. So if you buy 4 connections, you never have to pay another upgrade cost. There's no data plans for how much data you're using on your server. If you own the server and you bought the clients, that's it. That's the only. So for an OEM, that's you're not looking at annual costs on this.
Just a clarification, Steve. We're talking about connections, not actual clients, but talking about connections.
Yeah. So each of those 4 VPN connections is what you purchase when you buy the server, and then you can buy additional connections. So if you configure a connection in your server, that's one of the connections used. If you delete it, you have another connection you can use. And we'll show that. I think Rick's going to cover that. So, but if you had 4 different devices, this would be 4 connections. You have the server, you have a client, which could be a remote PC, like an engineer working remotely at his home, and he needed to connect to a PLC, say at a company or at a machine somewhere remotely over a mobile network. He would be a connection. That PLC that connected to 876 on the bottom here would be a connection, and this Security Appliance S600 would also be a connection. So those are your connections. If you remove one of those connections from your server, you have another connection. So that's how the costing is as far as applying connections. Let's go on to the next slide here. And then some of our devices do require a key plug, which we talked about, to have that SINEMA RC connection. So if you had your server, for instance, can reside anywhere. Siemens can host a server. You could host it remotely at your headquarters. That server is configured wherever you want on the internet, or in your factory, or in the OEM. So the way that is configured, and Rick's going to show this in detail, is he would configure, the admin of that server would configure all the devices that he wanted and all the users that he wanted to connect through his VPN server. And there's relationships with those certain groups. So you could actually say, for this plant here, I'm going to connect this OEM and this user that is connected remotely through these 2 different devices. And those associations can be made. So if I were, say, this engineer working up here at a hotel, I would have a data on my client. It would show me who I have connections with. So you can say I can connect to this PLC because it's the way it was configured at the server. Now this is a rendezvous type server, meaning that all the connections go through the server. So for instance, if I have this PLC here connecting through the internet to this OEM, those connections were already established, and the OEM can now connect as long as the plants, for instance, said, okay, I'm going to turn on that connection either via a key switch, or maybe the OEM has a cell modem and he turns on the connection via SMS or email. So once that connection is established, maybe there's a light stack that shows that somebody's connecting to that PLC in the plant, and now the connection can go through the server and the OEM can now work on that PLC. Similarly, if that
Steve, just to stop. Someone has taken control of the screen and is sharing their part supply and demand. You're no longer presenting right now.
Oh, really? Let me see if I can get back.
Or maybe that's your screen, but it's showing.
No, I don't know who that is. All right, let's see if we can do this again here.
Ernie Hess, is that maybe? Yeah, it was Ernie Hess.
Can you see it now?
Yes. Thank you.
Yep. So if that engineer in the hotel needed to connect, once the connection's established, he can now communicate with, say, this PLC through this security appliance down here to that PLC. So all these connections have to be established. We talked about that. And lastly, two other points, and I'm going to let Rick take over. This is just showing the connection from that engineer through the rendezvous server to the PLC through the security appliance. So again, the server can sit anywhere. It can be up on the web. It can be in your demilitarized zone in your plant, maintained by your IT group. And then if you were the end user here, you could actually specifically set up who has connections specifically to your plant and to your PLC. So you might give this OEM a connection. You might give some of your engineers a connection, but you control that. And then if you were the OEM and you had a lot of different plants that you're supporting, you could set up the connections and offer that service to the end users you support. And maybe you might even give them a remote connection to their own plant if they so wish, and you're going to supply that. So that's how SINEMA RC works. And now Rick's going to actually show you how to set it up and give you some pointers. There's a lot of other things you can do. I think the one thing about Siemens is we can do a lot of stuff with our devices. We're going to show you the basics right now. And then if you have any interest in setting up natting or user-based firewalls or anything else, we'd be glad to talk to you later. So go ahead, Rick. You can take ownership of the slides now.
All right. Thank you, Steve. I'm going to share my screen. And let me know if, is this visible?
Yep.
You can see the architecture? Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So this is the architecture topology that I have set up here. This is what I'm going to use to go over the demonstration. So I just kind of want to go over what all the parts and pieces are here and kind of make an analogy to what Steve talked about. So out in a remote location right now, we have our SINEMA Remote Connect server here on the far right, public IP 107.7.255.103. So that's our SRC. It's sitting up there. And here's everything else is in my office here in the lab. So I've got my home ISP router, getting a local IP 192.168.1.1 from my ISP. The PC that I'm on currently right now, I'm going to use that to make my virtual tunnel connections, as well as to run my TIA portal to connect into my PLC. So this has my SINEMA Remote Connect client on it. So I've got my client here on the left, my SINEMA Remote Connect server on the right. And I've got this set up so that I'm actually natting, because in this way I can establish my tunnel and to the server, but at the same time I can go locally onto my my Security Appliance S615 and configure that. So that's what I'm going to be demonstrating. And then the last piece of that is the Security Appliance. This is the S615. Steve showed you a photo of this as well. So this is going to allow me to create a tunnel and get an entire subnet behind it, right? So in this case, I've got a 1215 PLC. It doesn't have to be a Siemens PLC. It could be any automation, your drives, another PLC, HMIs, whatever devices are behind that entire subnet. We also, as Steve mentioned, we have other security appliances that are cellular, and we have some too that are just for the automation. So in the 1200 PLC form factor or the S71500 PLC form factor, the ET200 SP form factor, which will just allow you to connect that piece of automation, but not necessarily the subnets behind them. So we've got some flexibility there on how we want to connect our automation, whether it's an entire subnet or multiple subnets actually could sit behind this S615. There's 2 VLANs on this 615, as you can see right here. The top port, by default, comes out of the factory as VLAN 2. That's used for the WAN interface. The other 4 ports are on VLAN 1. That subnet is on the 10.1, which is having my PLC 10.100 on the local subnet. I can actually reconfigure these ports if I want, and I can make up the total of 5 VLANs if I need to. So it's got a lot of flexibility. So that's the topology we're going to go over, and I'll switch over and log on to the server and get going here. So I'm going to switch gears to, this is my SINEMA Connect server. This is at 107.7.255.103. I'm going to log in as my administrator. And this is a sandbox instance that we created for this demo. So it's not going to have anything on it. It's completely clean. We wipe it out every time we do one of these demos. So normally when you pull this up, you might see all of your security appliances that you have out there in the field that you want to connect to. Right now I have none, just because it's clean. So the first thing that I would want to do is, I'm getting some background noise. Someone needs to unmute, to mute. There we go. Thank you. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a participant group. And as Steve mentioned, the way that the communication relations set up in SINEMA Connect are through groups. And it's very, very flexible. We need to mute.
I think everybody's muted. I don't know if there's some feedback or something.
Okay. All right. The groups are very flexible. So what I mean by that is, in the simplest format, which I'm going to demonstrate, I can throw my security appliance in one group. I can throw my remote user in that same group, and I can allow those members to communicate with each other within that group. And as Steve mentioned before, there's no direct VPN tunnels. Everything goes to the server. It's a rendezvous server, and that's also very attractive to IT departments, because usually direct connections are a no-no of security policies. It's not something that they're really that attractive to them. So when they find out that this is a rendezvous server, that's usually more attractive to IT departments, and there's separate VPN tunnels that are authenticated with each connection, whether it's the device or the user at the server, and then only after they're authenticated is the data then married and encrypted between the two of them. But I could create lots of different groups as well. If I'm servicing different customers, say I'm an OEM sending machines out to different customers, I might make a group for customer A, a group for customer B, customer C, and put their security appliances in each one of those groups. And then maybe my technician group is in another group, and we basically just drawing lines to groups to connect their communications. But in no way would you want customer A to be able to see customer B's machines, so that's how you would keep them separated, by putting them in different groups. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to create one group, and I'm going to put everything in that group. So I'm going to call that group Demo Group. You can see it comes up in my list because I've done that before. And I'm going to say, hey, everybody that's a member of this group, you can communicate with each other. Because unless I do that, then I'm only creating unilateral communication relationships. But I'm going to say save, and now I've created a group called Demo Group that the users can communicate with each other. Nothing else belongs to this group at this point until I start adding them. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a device. And actually, you know what, I'm gonna go away from script. I'm gonna create my user first. So the first thing I'm gonna do is create my user after my group. And I gotta give that user a name. This will be the login name. So we'll say customer, we'll say technician. How about we'll call it technician ABC Cluth, and we'll go all the way down here. And now at this point, I'm going to move on, and I can give that person rights, but these are rights for administrative purposes on SINEMA Connect. So in this case, if I'm just talking about technicians who are going to log into my automation, I generally probably don't want to give them rights to administer Center Remote Connect on the server. So I'm going to leave these all unchecked and just move on to the next tab, which is which groups do I want this user to belong to? Well, in this case, I'm going to put them in my demo group. A user or a device can belong to multiple groups. So that's how I create all these different lines. I can have different groups and have multiple relationships between those groups. So it's very flexible in its configuration. Now I save the VPN connection mode. I'm going to leave it as the default, which is OpenVPN. Again, as Steve mentioned, it supports OpenVPN and IPsec, which are both industry standards. If I wanted to give that user a fixed VPN address that they would get every single time they logged in, I could do that here. And then these other parameters, which I'm not going to address, are OpenVPN. This is if my Center Remote Connect server was being NATed. So if it was being NATed, then I would take advantage of these other OpenVPN connection parameters. But this is not the case, so I'm going to move on to the last tab, which is the user's password. So give this user a password. Finish off my user creation. So now I've created my username, Technician ABC. Right now they're offline. And when I go to use Center Remote Connect Client, this is the username that I will log in with. Last step is now to create my device. And my device, I'm talking about my security appliance. I'm going to go into the remote connections. And I'm going to create my first device. I give that device a name. We're going to call that customer ABC. Now I'm going to give the device a password. This password is used for authentication of the tunnel when the device tries to make a connection to the server. This is not the password that is used for web-based administration of the device. It's for the tunnel itself. So this is used to authenticate it. And it's one of 3 different pieces of information that's required. So I'm going to give that a password, confirm that password. Now I'm going to say the type of device it is. This is a security appliance. So this is, in my case, it is a S615. If it was something else, I could select that and my menu options would change. So if I was connecting with a cellular device, I would get some more different fields to fill in. But it is an S615. Notice the location and comment fields are not filled in. They're not necessary. But I could put something in here because if I've got many devices out there, I can filter by location or filter by comment or filter by name. There's many different filtering options. And the more devices that you have, the more it makes sense to add some other information in here so that you can filter the device by. VPN settings, again, down here, if I wanted to change the protocol from OpenVPN to IPsec, this is where I would do it. Steve mentioned different ways of connecting. So right now the default is permanent, which means as soon as my device is authenticated, it will make a permanent connection to the server. However, again, in the case of maybe I want some extra security and as an end customer where the automation actually resides, maybe I want to take advantage of the digital input that's on here. So the OEM calls up the end user because maybe there's some troubleshooting that needs to take place or some maintenance or maybe some updates, and they want to create a tunnel into the device. The customer says, okay, I'll do that. I'm going to go enable the input, selector switch or push button in this case that's local to the automation, right, hardwired right into the contact of the S615. And only when that digital input is made is the tunnel established. And as soon as that digital input is canceled, the selector switch is turned off or the push button is turned off, then that tunnel is canceled as well. So in this case, the end user has a little bit of control over the situation. They just don't have their OEM tunneling in at any time that they want to and creating a connection into their automation. So this gives the end user that bit of control if they were to go with, say, a digital input. And in the case of the cellular modem, it supports a digital input as well as the SMS, text, or email, like Steve said. So I'm going to leave that as permanent. Now I'm going to add the group. what group or groups does this device belong to? Well, it's going to belong to the demo group. That's the only group that I created. And then I'm going to move on to next, which is my network settings. Now here's where I set up my subnets. So I'm going to say, yeah, the device is a network gateway. I'm going to give it a subnet name, call it automation. If I have more than one subnet, I can add as many as I want here, but I'm going to add which subgroups belong to that, or which groups belong to that automation. Again, my demo group. What subnet IP is that going to be? Well, what was that? Running my topology diagram is 192.168.10.0 was the subnet, and the subnet mask was 255.255.255.0. NAT mode is I'm going to enable that, so I'm going to have a one-to-one NAT. And notice as soon as I do that, it pulls from a configurable address range of where I want the virtual subnet IP to come from. So I'm going to change this to .10 to coincide with my subnet IP. And in this case, if I wanted to, but it's not required, I could start adding individual nodes that are on that subnet. And in this case, I'll do that just to kind of demonstrate how that works. But so call it S7-1215 PLC. We'll add that node. That node's IP is, according to the diagram, 192.168.10.100. And as soon as I do that, notice it filled in the virtual node IP of 10.100. So if I NAT into this device through my tunnel, this is the virtual IP that I'm going to use for that specific PLC at 10.100. And then I'll add the demo group. And I'm going to add the demo group. Oh, it's already been added. And at this point, I'm done adding my group. Now it's going to spin a little bit here on the right when it's creating certificates. And as soon as that's done, all right, so now at the far right, I've got my device added, customer ABC. It's not online, permanent connection via OpenVPN. I said before, for the device to authenticate onto the server, it's going to need 3 pieces of information. It's going to need a device ID, which comes from the server. It's going to need the username and password that I set up. And then it's going to need either a fingerprint or a certificate. And those I get those pieces of information as soon as I set this device up here. So the certificates I can export here on my actions. The other pieces of information, I go into my information. I say, okay, the server set me up as device 34. That's cool. I've got 2 fingerprint options, SHA-1 and SHA-256, depending on the level that you want to go with from a security standpoint. I'm going to go with the most extreme security and SHA-256 and copy that. And then I've got my password. Everything else is not needed, but again, from filtering standpoint, it shows you the other information. So I got my device, my ID, my fingerprint. I'm ready to go add this to my security appliance. I'll exit this dialog, and I'm going to switch tabs over to my SCALANCE S615 and log in there at 1.25. This is from the north side of the 615. Now I've got some pre-configured items on here already. So one thing, it's kind of like a pseudo piece of information that's necessary. I said there was 3, but there's a kind of a 4th is a relative timestamp. So the times have to be within a certain amount of minutes of each other between the Center Remote Connect server and the device or user that's trying to log in. Otherwise, you won't be able to make a connection. And this is also just part of the security policy. So I've already got my time synced with an NTP server that I did already, and I already set up my subnets per the diagram. So on VLAN 1, subnet 10.0, VLAN 2, the northbound 1.25 going through my ISP router. So this has already been pre-done. At this point, All I need to do is take the information that the server gave me and log into the Cineremote Remote Connect configuration part. So first thing I'm doing is set up my server address. Where am I pointing to? That's already done at 103. That's just kind of left over from doing this before. I select the verification type, fingerprint or certificate. Well, I'm going to go with fingerprint. And I'll paste that in. I just grab that. And now I add my device ID. I believe it was 34. It's 34. Let's double check that. Yeah, it was 34. I need the password, how I set it up. This is for authentication. And then the optional settings, if I let the device do auto firewall and NAT rules, it will take care of all the NATing and firewall rules internally in the 615 that are necessary per what was set up in Cineremote Remote Connect server. So I'm going to leave that in. I'm going to set values. And at this point, I'm going to enable my connection to Cineremote Remote Connect here, SRC. Now, I should be able to look online and go and verify my connection. So I'm going to head up to the information section here, Cineremote Remote Connect, and bing. I've got an established connection to port 1194. There's the device name, fingerprint, everything that, and my subnets that are behind the device that are connected. It also gave me a remote address of 107.7.255.103. Similarly, if I go back over to my Cineremote Remote Connect server here, I should be able to see that. Now my status has changed from offline to online, and I have that connection. And notice now some things have been filled in. So now that that device is connected, it's showing me the virtual subnets that are behind it on the 172.17.10 network, 10.0. The actual native address of the remote subnet that maps to that virtual subnet. And then here's the VPN address that is assigned to my device. And again, the virtual subnets of the remote subnet networks and the VPN addresses of the device are configurable here in Cineremote Remote Connect server. So if I'm not going to go through it, but this is where I would do it in the address spaces. So I can set these ranges up. That's for the appliance, and then this is for my remote subnets of what those ranges and subnet masks are, a pool of addresses that I want to be assigned to it. So at this point, I've now got a established connection between my device and the Cineremote Remote Connect server. I'm going to head over now and log in as a client and create my tunnel. So far, so good. I think we can still see everything, right? Someone would tell me if we couldn't. All right. So here I am in a virtual machine. I got my connection. I'm going to just try pinging my automation at 192.168.10.100. I shouldn't have a connection. That's the local address. I'm not logged in, so this is expected. No connection. And I'm going to fire up my Cineremote Remote Connect client. So Cineremote Remote Connect client comes up. I've got my address of my server. Now I'm going to use my username, which was Technician ABC, and my password. Log on. Now all this is a log on. I haven't created a tunnel yet. All I've done is authenticate onto the server, and the server just verifying who I am. I haven't created a connection yet. But based on who I am, Technician ABC, and what participant group I'm part of, which is the demo group, it has said, oh, you have a possibility to connect to this device, customer ABC, and the networks behind it. Anything that I'm able to connect to would show up in this menu. And it can also be another user. So I can create user-to-user tunnels. I can also create device tunnels and have devices exchange information over a secure encrypted tunnel as well. It doesn't have to just be user to device. So again, flexibility there because they're all separate tunnels going in and rendezvousing at the server. So at this point, I've been authenticated. I'm online. Here's what I can connect to. And I have two different options on how I want to connect to this automation network. If I say yes, and I select the yes option, this is basically saying I will connect with the NATed address. So the 172.17.10.0 subnet will be active when I connect with this network. As you can imagine, if you're building serial machines and you're always reusing the same IP subnets for your local automation, and those are the machines that you're shipping out, and you had a list of these appliances here, all your subnets would be the same. SINEMA Connect would take care of mapping all of those virtual subnets to separate NATs for you, right? And so you would always be logging in and accessing those devices through the virtual NAT. But I have one other additional option, which is this NAT option here. It might be counterintuitive, but in this case, using NAT will actually allow me to log in to the device or access the device with its native address, so the 192.168.10.0 subnet. I can only do that with one of my selections. So I only have one appliance here. I could do it either or, and I'm going to demonstrate both. But if I had multiple appliances here and multiple subnets, I could select yes for all but one of them and then make one of them NAT if I wanted to access it with the local network. So I'm going to start out by showing you the yes option. Actually, I'll start off by using the NAT option because I think that will. I'm going to press the connection button. And it's going to go through some status updates here. Give me an update. And now it says, now I have device specific connection. So I have a status connection. And notice some of the fields are still grayed out. Those are the virtual ones. The ones that are illuminated are the local ones. So it's telling me, okay, this is your connectivity is through your 192.168.10.0 subnet. Now I can go into my automation. And here's my PLC project. I got my PLC that I set up beforehand. And I'm going to go online. We'll use the extended online option. And right now, it knows that I've got 10.100 set up as the PLC. I'm going to leave all my settings and just do a search for the subnet. So it's going to start looking for 192.168.10.100. And bam, it found it at 192.168.10.100. I'm going to try going online. And we should see all my status fields update, which they are all greens, checkbox. If I want to go on and get some, see the online and diagnostics, if I actually select the device, and we'll pull up my online information about the device. So I am connected to it through its native address. And I would expect I could ping it as well. And yeah, I'm getting my reply now. All right, so now I've connected to it natively. But what happens if I have a lot of serial machines, all with the same native IPs? Let's go offline with the device. Let's go back to our SRC client. Let's disconnect my tunnel. And let's switch the connection to yes. So we're going to use the virtual address, reestablish the connection. And now the opposite fields are illuminated and the other fields that I previously had are grayed out. So now it's telling me, okay, when you connect to this device this time, you need to use 172.17.10.0 subnet. And in this case, 10.100 for the PLC specifically. All right, so that's the node virtual address. So I'm connected again. Let's ping that address, 172.17.10.100. All right, that should be good to go. Now I can go online, extend it online. Now, just one little nuance when I'm going through Portal. So Portal doesn't know about that address. So I've got to type in the access address, and from previous demos, it's already there, but this is where I would do. I'll just click on the address field here, extended online, type in my address, 10.100 of the PLC. And as soon as I hit enter, it starts searching. Attempts to connect. I've already pinged it, so I would expect it's not going to have any issues. And everything looks good. Now I can go online. And just waiting for the update. There's the module information. There's my connection. Online diagnostics already there. So same thing, different method, right? One going through the NATed address, one going through the native address on the local subnet, but both secure encrypted connection through SINEMA Connect server. And if I jump back to my server, and I'll see that my device is online, and then I'll also be able to see my user online here as well. So that was the extent of the demo. So Steve, maybe I'll turn it back to you, and if there's something else you would like me to show, or you have a question, or the audience has a question.
The audience, if you have any questions at this point, I have a couple questions I got text in, but a client or sent in. So if anybody has any questions specifically about the software or the technology we're using, or any questions at all, please go ahead and ask them now. And while you're thinking about a question, I did get one question regarding does our security appliances and software support other PLCs like Ethernet IP? I'll leave that one for you, Rick.
Yeah, any automation you want to put. We're really just talking about the network pieces of this, right? So it could be a third-party PLC behind the security appliance. It could be a drive, an HMI, a barcode reader, whatever automation that you want to put behind there. And then you use your own tools, just like I was using TI Portal. You would use your own tools to connect to it through the tunnel. But we're just supplying the secure encrypted tunnel and the network infrastructure. The devices that you want to put behind it are entirely up to you.
And I guess the other question, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead and ask your question, sir. Is somebody going to ask a question? The other question I got then is, can we use other people's security appliances with our SINEMA RC if they support OpenVPN or IPsec?
Yeah, theoretically, yes. We could do that. Again, like you said, we support OpenVPN, IPsec. Those are two industry standards. We have done that. So we use. I'm using SINEMA Connect client for the user. That's when I'll go back to that and show that. I have that inside my. This is basically a Siemens wrapper around a standard OpenVPN. It's giving you a lot more than if you were to download the OpenVPN GUI, which I have loaded as well. My other colleagues have loaded that. But I mean, all that's doing is, you're exporting your OpenVPN configuration and attaching it to your OpenVPN GUI, and it's just making the connection for you. At that point, you're not getting all the bells and whistles here, like, hey, you're being seen what you can connect to, giving options on whether you connect through the native addresses or through the virtual addresses. and basically a lot more visuals and a lot more user-friendly wrapper right here. Same thing goes with the security appliances. Yeah, theoretically, if I had a device that supports OpenVPN, as long as I can export that OpenVPN configuration, I can import that into SINEMA Connect as well and make that connection. So the answer is yes on all that.
Okay.
There's
Go ahead.
2 more questions that came in.
Okay. Did you read them?
Yeah. What would be the benefit of utilizing the system over, say, the Cisco Meraki platform?
I'm not familiar with Meraki. Steve, are you familiar with the Meraki platform?
No, I mean, there's a lot of platforms out there, but I'm not familiar with that one, unfortunately. So we could take that one and get back to you, whoever that is.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make a note of it. The other question that came in is, why is the connection shown as not secure?
Where is that at? I have no idea where it would be showing not secure. Is that maybe when I was logging into the?
Trying to remember. Yeah, I think maybe when we were logging into the server, it said non-secure.
Yeah, if it's right. Yeah, maybe if I go here.
Yeah, it shows up.
Well, it wouldn't be right here, but I think what.
Not secure because it's not using HTTPS, using HTTP.
Oh, it's because I don't have. Yeah, when it shows here, it's because the certificate hasn't. I haven't loaded the certificate for myself in conjunction with the server. So that's just I guess laziness. But a lot of people don't want to go through the trouble to do that. So it will just allow you to bypass that if you want. But it has nothing to do with the tunnel connection. This just has to do with a web-based management session on the device or the server. Same thing with here.
Okay.
So if I exported my user certificate and loaded it onto the device, I'd have to do that for pretty much everything that I play with that I've got here in my lab. It would be pretty time consuming. So most people just bypass it and just say, okay, thanks, but I know it's secure. I'm going ahead and move on.
But if you're a customer and you have a PC that you use for maintenance on your PLCs, you would probably load the certificate on that to make sure you're always connecting in a secure fashion, yeah. Right? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So,
and a lot of times I don't even see customers doing it. But I mean, this is again more for web-based management. It has nothing to do with the tunnel connection that's made between the security appliance with the automation behind it and the users that are logging in to remotely access that. This is just me logging into the device to configure the device and not having the certificate ready.
So, just in the interest of time, I'm just going to share one more screen with you, and then we'll wrap it up. And we do appreciate everybody's time. Just kind of I don't know if you can see my screen, that one. Okay. Just takeaways. We're connection based. You're only paying once for the number of connections. It's not an annual return. Annuity that you have to pay every year. Once you buy the connections, that's what you have. The data, again, you own it. It's a single tenant server, very secure. Again, our security appliances are not just connecting outside the plant. You can do a lot of different things, as we showed you. And if you want more details, again, we can go through that with you, on a separate call. Lastly, the address book Rick showed you, the SINEMA client. It's really cool is that you can set up all those relationships so each person can have their own address book on what they can connect to, whether it be a plant-based or customer-based and so forth. And then the other cool feature, I think, that is the ability to turn on the connection when you want, either remotely through our cell modems or with a key switch. And all of our products have a 5-year warranty, whether you buy our switches or our security appliances, you buy them through Applied. And then, of course, we support all the different products. There's a nice promotion going on right now through Applied. So if you want to test out any of these products, we have a package with our radio modems, which comes with 4 clients, 4 connections. We have another package for our WAN-based security appliances with 4 connections. And we have our gigabit 636 that comes with 64 clients or connections. And then we also have a Profi bus. If you have legacy equipment out there, you can use this as well to connect.
And let me just point out, to clarify the connection. So these licenses that are based on connections, these are configured connections. So they're configured in SINEMA Connect. And we're not talking about the automation pieces, your PLCs. We're talking about the security appliances or the users. So in my example, I configured one user and I configured one security appliance. That's 2 connections. So it's not number of PLCs or HMIs or drives or whatever automation you have there. That's anything that can sit behind the subnets, behind the security appliances. You can put as much as you want there. It's just how many security appliances and or users that you have in total that are configured in the system that go towards that license count.
You could disable a user, regain a connection.
No.
If you just
you'd have to delete them. Disabling them does not. It's configured connection.
Delete the connection. Oh, sorry. All right. Well, I think that's the end of our seminar today. And again, we thank you, Applied, Marie, for setting this up. We'd love to hear from you. And, you know, if you have any questions, my email's right up here. We're glad to follow up with you and one of the Applied folks to see if we can help you. But thanks again for your time today. Sorry we went over a little bit. We'd love to talk to you in the future. Hope you stay safe and healthy. Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't been able to get the video on this, but I've been listening to it. I do have a current application right now with an Opto 22 system. They're looking to remote access. So if somebody from Applied Controls, I've been working with those guys for a long time, somebody can send me some information on the different modems and the different packages that are currently available, I'd appreciate it.
So
we
Marie,
will,
you got,
Steve. I have it. Yep.
You have my email and all that.
Yes, I do, Steve.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. It was a good seminar. I enjoyed listening, even though I couldn't see anything. I have a good imagination.
She's saving this, so if you want to see the video, I guess you're going to put it up on your web page or something, or you're going to mail out the link.
I'll check it at the end of the week.
Okay. Yeah.
But thank you for a good seminar.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Stay safe, you guys.
Yeah, everybody do the same. Have a great day, everyone. Enjoy your rest of your day.
Thanks,
Marie.
You too. You're welcome.
Thanks, Marie.